Formation Commission of March 5th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rosenberg.
Here.
Commissioner Hamburg.
Here.
Commissioner Orth.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner McCowan.
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Here.
Commissioner Doble.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here. Public expression. There isn't anybody from the public here today, so we'll skip public expression. We'll move on to other business, city representation appointments.
Yes, the City Select Committee met on February 20th and reappointed Commissioner Doble and Commissioner Ignacio as the alternate.
And Jerry has 2 more years here.
I believe at the end of this year. Yes.
Good. Okay, what about our special district? Have they, any nominations yet?
We did not receive any nominations, so we will be restarting the process in this coming week.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 4, consent calendar. Approval of the regular minutes of February 5th or approval of the February 18 claims. Just for the record, I'd like to add into the minutes, excuse me, that Carrie Brown was also on the executive committee, even though it is vice chair. I just want the record to reflect that Carrie's on the executive committee.
With that, I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll
consent
second.
Items.
Okay, we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan.
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes.
Commissioner Doble.
Yes.
Commissioner McNerlin. We're voting on the consent calendar. You want to abstain?
Consent, yeah.
Were there any changes to it?
Just adding Carrie Brown to the executive committee.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Did you go around already? So we'll move on to item 5, public hearing items. There's no public hearings this particular month. Number 6, workshop items. We have 5 workshop items today. We are expecting some fire chiefs today.
I believe we're expecting 2 fire chiefs.
Do you want to start with one that we know a fire chief isn't going to be here?
Sure, we can start with Covelo.
Okay. Is that all right with the commission?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Why don't you give us an update then, please?
Thank you. So as you noted, this is the first of 5 workshops we're holding today. These are the final 5 for the multi-district fire services SOI update. Covelo Fire Protection District was formed in 1961. It serves approximately 25.7 square miles within its jurisdiction. The draft sphere update includes updated financials that are based on from the State Controller's Office. And the State Controller's Office data reflects year-end reports that are provided by the district. The sphere was last set in 1993 with the other fire districts in the county. They have not requested a modification to the existing sphere, and the sphere update recommends affirmation of the existing sphere. There are 2 updates to the MSR determinations starting on page 28 of 130. So as a reminder, the approach we've taken to the MSR updates is to identify those updates in the table with strike through and underlining. For number 3, we've removed the reference to the Round Valley County Water District. And for number 3, for number 11, we've updated the information regarding the paramedic contract. They no longer have funding for that paramedic, and so that is no longer accurate. The financial information on page 26 and 27 of 130 has been updated with the year-end reports from the State Controller's Office. The administrative draft and the workshop draft were both provided to the district, and we've received no comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? John?
I just had a couple of items on page 25 of 130. the paragraph at the top. About 2/3 of the way down, it says prior fire protection providers adjacent to the district. And in this case, there are gaps. So I think in proximity would be more accurate. And that would hold true for some of the other fire reports as well, although in some cases adjacent is accurate, but maybe just in general throughout the rest of them we could say in proximity rather than adjacent. So that's my first major change.
And actually, I agree.
Yeah. do too.
And then I'm not certain, but you know, I know the county has provided funding to encourage or support advanced life support service in Covelo as well as Laytonville and Anderson Valley. I think that may have begun in 15-16 fiscal year. I think this is the third fiscal year the county has provided that enhanced funding, but I'm not certain if it went directly to the districts or if it, in the case of Covelo, it may have been directly to Vera Health. So I'll check with county staff on that, and then if I can verify that funds were provided in 15-16 and exactly who they went to, I'll provide that information to staff.
Is that the only one, that Covelo is the only one?
Well, Covelo is not the only one that received funding, but it may have been structured differently for Covelo, which may be why it doesn't show on their books, assuming they did get that in 15-16. The only other thing, and by the way, all of these are very well done, so on the narrative on page 28, item 11, and it refers to paramedics from Vera Health discontinued its partnership with the district due to a lack of funding. I'm not sure that is necessarily accurate because, again, the county was providing $60,000 to the Covelo area to support ALS service. Vera Health did discontinue that relationship unilaterally, but again, I'll check with the county and see what their opinion is and whether they agree with the way this is stated. So that's the only thing, really. The only substantive change potentially relates to the county support for the ALS service.
Okay, so you'll get back to our executive
Yes.
officer. Okay, good. Anything else? Tony?
Yes, throughout all of these documents, you refer to membership in a special district association, and that needs to be corrected to their membership in the Mendocino Association of Fire Districts. Also,
Mendocino County
Mendocino
Association of
County
Fire
Association of Fire Districts,
point.
excuse me. Also, we recommend under Covelo that they consider formation of a JPA, and I'm not sure in some of the rural districts that's an appropriate recommendation by LAFCo, but there are other fire districts like Brick Trails and Willits where that would be appropriate, where they actually are beginning to work very closely together. But I believe Covelo is so remote that we have to consider whether that's even a recommendation.
But that's something we would review at the next MSR.
That would be fine too, but it is something we need to be aware of.
Yes, Carol?
There's limited water access mentioned here. And I was wondering, you remember we were supposed to have some kind of conversation about the water district up there that was going to be negotiating with the tribe?
Uh-huh.
And I wonder if that had any effect on this. You know, the fact of tribal access to water. I mean, a fire district that has limited access to water is, you know, I have some concerns. So that's mentioned that they have some storage of water and they use ponds and swimming pools. You know, it struck me as a problem, and that was on page 30.
Did you have any discussions with the fire chief on that?
No, not specifically about that topic. I wasn't aware of the discussion from before with the water district, but we can look into that as we prepare the draft documents for the public hearing.
Yeah, I believe our council is still looking at that relationship between the tribe and the district, because it affects a lot of other counties as well, but I haven't seen anything come back yet.
I'll follow up on that.
And also, I'm concerned about the fact that they're using their reserves, and there's simply no way that they have enough income to, you know, I was playing with the math of how much money they have in reserves and how long they could continue. And that didn't bode well for the long term.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yes, Tony?
Also, I believe it showed that they had not done a local tax election. They're basically surviving on property taxes, but Covelo hasn't gone to the electorate for a special tax. And I would think we'd want to recommend that they do so because of their economic situation.
Again, I think that's an MSR recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, not an SOI.
I mean, we repeat the MSRs here, staff has, so we're familiar with what's been recommended, but I think so if there's something that relates to the SOI determination, but
We could always state it at if Covelo considers expanding their SOI, that they also consider going for such a tax election.
that's still an MSR determination in my opinion, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Is there a way that we can set up a little file for future MSR adjustments that could add comments like this when we get to Covelo MSR again?
Yes, we can do that and then track them for the next round. Sure.
Okay. Well, we'll track it, Tony, and we'll have it. They're coming up in a year or two in their MSR.
So,
Sure.
and I kind of agree with Mr. McKellen that it's not appropriate, but in that file, and I don't know how appropriate it is, would we send them some sort of memo saying, hey, it's not part of the official document, so that in those notes, when we open this up again, there's a letter sitting there that this letter was sent on some suggestions, as opposed to the actual document? I don't know how that works, or the appropriateness of that. That way, at least it's on record that we had these suggestions before we revisit that MSR, because it sounds like we start from scratch again, and it sounds like they could be doing some proactive work ahead of the MSR. Just a thought.
Well, our
Thank you.
MSRs are a living document. They do change all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
So it is important that we bring these things up and we can
Okay.
tackle them again.
I've been trying to follow up with the fire districts as after the meetings, so I think that we could put these notes together and share that with them as part of that process.
Good. All right, anything else? It was a well-written document too. I agree with John. Did a good job on all of it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to another one that maybe a fire chief isn't showing up.
I don't think he will be here.
Which one is next?
Cross said he was coming.
That bill is coming?
Cross said that last week, so.
Okay, because he just got back from South America
know,
last
right.
night.
Oh.
But he was to call you before he left. Because he had, we
Oh, he
went,
did. Oh, yeah, he did.
okay, because I had several changes,
We got those.
and it appears they've been made.
Yeah, I spoke to him.
Okay.
We'll do Potter Valley last and just give him a few more minutes. Let's move on to Mendocino.
I want to thank Captain Pisayas for the assistance with this. We did receive feedback from the district. The Mendocino Fire Protection District was formed in 1948. It has a boundary area of approximately 24 square miles. They do provide a full range of services, including EMT, first responder level, rescue and extrication, cliff and ocean rescue, first responder for hazardous materials, incidents, fire prevention, and wildland fire protection as a secondary provider. They are bordered by the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District on the north and the Albion Little River Fire Protection District to the south, and Oncomchee to the southeast. As with all the other fire districts, the sphere of influence was established in 1993. They have not requested any modifications to their sphere of influence. No updates have been made to the municipal service review determinations for this one. The financial data has been updated with audits that the district provided, and a statement of net position has been included on page 61 of 130. As I mentioned, the district did provide feedback on the administrative draft and has been incorporated.
Okay. John, do you have any comments on this one?
Yes, and again, very well done. But what I noted is on the financial summary, which is on 55 of 130, and this is, I'm sure, the way the districts set it up, but we don't have the same categories listed in the financial summaries. And for instance, Covelo has different categories, but I can see where Mendocino may well have chosen to break particularly their expenses down into more categories. But what I didn't see for them is any line item for capital outlay, and they may not have had any capital outlays for the years shown, but to me, capital outlay ought to be a line item on every budget that we're looking at, or every financial summary. And then also, I assume we're in the process of getting the data for fiscal year 15-16.
That's correct. They were just waiting for the final document. We hope to get that this month.
And one other thing, it does mention on page 56, right above the MSR determinations, that the district had a special tax measure, Measure T, in 2004. And I wonder, where we know that type of detail, would it make sense to maybe reference that in the financial summaries, so that if all of the special assessment money came from Measure T, simply say special assessment Measure T or something like that? Because that's an important source of funding for the districts, and I think that would help us in the future when we look at the MSRs. Well, these districts not only have a property tax increment, they also have special assessments. Gosh, they're doing pretty well. And here these others are still depending on bake sales or something. I just kind of, the more detail about where their revenue comes from, I think it could be helpful.
Good. Tony?
I agree, because an example would be Brook Trails. We actually have 2 elective special taxes, so one on top of the other. And I know that that kind of detail is important, because there has been times where people thought we weren't even raising local taxes. It is an important component to show that there's local revenue being generated by a district. And the Covelo comment plays into that. Some are saying that because the state tax just went away, that these districts have an opportunity to go out for special taxes now that the state withdrew theirs. So it's an important differential between the fire districts. Some might even have a sunset on their special tax.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it is a detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick thing. There's a
a major wastewater treatment plant upgrade going on, which is going to affect firefighting capability in the town. I just wondered if that was raised. I think this is, again, one of those MSR rather than SOI things, but it is something to note because it's going to mean, I don't know if there's new fire hydrants or that existing fire hydrants will have enhanced capacity. There's going to be 2 new 500-gallon-a-minute distribution pumps that'll be installed in this new plant, which, you know, will have a major positive effect on the capabilities of the fire district. So again, just something to note and probably something to come up at the next MSR.
Good point. Well, I might like to say that this is finally a document. I see the financial information the way I want it. It has depreciation. It has a balance sheet in the back. I agree that the capital outlay should be on the financial summary, but not in the income statement. It should be a separate one. Because if you look at Covelo, they lost money for 3 years, but a lot of it was capital outlays, which would be depreciated, not an actual. It is a cash expense, but it really doesn't show the net income or net loss of what they're actually doing. But this has been perfect, and I appreciate that. I look back, and it looks like Rick Bauer is the one that did the audit, and I have to give him a kudo for that. So thank you.
Our analyst has put a lot of time into trying to make the financial summary to your standards.
And on top of that, they're doing well based on that because they're making income, and in their balance sheet they have a unrestricted equity, which is really good. And it shows their assets, building improvements, vehicles. So this is something I've been looking for a while. Thank you. Any other comments on Hopland? Mendocino, excuse me.
Just the very last page wasn't connected with the staple.
Oh.
So what?
I have
Okay.
a question, Commissioner Ward.
Yes.
So the Commissioner McCowan's comment regarding adding the discussion about the tax to the financial summary, was that intended for the MSR determinations, an additional determination, or a discussion in the sphere of influence section?
Well, I think really that would be an MSR, more an MSR, I would think. So it's just, you can add it to your little list of items that.
Okay, thank you.
There was one comment that he'd like to see an update on, and that's the funding situation in Covelo on the ambulance.
Right, but I'll do some fact checking on that.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Hopland.
So this starts on page 80 of your packet. And I would like to thank Chief Franklin for his assistance in providing information and also reviewing the administrative draft document. These MSRs were all adopted in 2016, just as a reminder. The Hopland Fire Protection District was formed in 1997. It has a boundary area of approximately 110 square miles. The Municipal Service Review had noted a boundary of 99.5 square miles, so we are trying to verify that through county GIS, but the district believes their boundary to be 110 square miles. They do provide the full range of services, including emergency medical technician, first responder level, rescue and extrication, search and rescue, including swift water rescue, first responder for hazardous materials incidents, fire prevention, and wildland fire protection as a second provider. They are adjacent to the district on the north is the to the south, to the north, Ukiah Valley Fire Protection District. To the south and west is the Anderson Valley CSD. And Sonoma County is to the south. The map is located on page 92 of your packet. The data that is included in the financial summary is taken from the State Controller's Office and reflects the year-end reports that were submitted by the district to the state. The past 3 audits were received after the packet went out, so we have that data, and we'll be including that for the public review draft. There is one update to the municipal service review determination on page 88, and that is number 15. And that is to reflect that all of their board seats have been filled. And the other update was to the financial data.
Okay. John, any comments on this one?
No?
I have a clarifying question. The Hopland Fire, they call it the Hopland Fire Protection District. It was formed in 1997, but the SOI was formed in 93. What was the SOI? Well, they didn't have a fire department until 97. What was the SOI?
So there went through some changes in the name, I believe, and also I believe, let me see. I think that went from a part of the water district. If you look at the, there's a rundown of the history on page 84.
So it was just a name change.
It was the Hopland Public Utilities District that was established in 1955. In 1997, the fire department became separate and was known as the Sunel Valley Fire Protection District, and then in 2002 they changed their name. So I believe the sphere of influence was established back.
I knew there was an explanation. Thank you.
Well, and part of it, it looks like, you know, the 501c3, well, no, the 501c3 is Hopland Firefighters Association, but maybe they were the antecedent of the district?
Dan, do you remember?
I think they were organized under community service district like Brick Trails, and then they separated and they went through a name change after they became Sunel, and then they became Hopland Fire, and that's really the progression.
Okay.
I believe there was quite a bit of politics about it if you go back through news accounts in the past.
I remember back, there was controversy, but it did happen.
Okay,
Just
thanks.
can't put my finger.
Carol, you had a question?
We never mentioned any mutual agreements with Lake County. Is that because we just don't mention it?
You mean like on 175 between
Yeah,
Lake County
I was
and
thinking
Hopland?
175, and I was thinking Potter Valley as well, when we get to that.
Okay. Well, we could certainly follow up with some questions with the chief. Okay, any other comments on this one? All right, we'll move on to Redwood Valley. Oh, you had comments? Sorry.
Yeah, when you talk about Hopland and other fire departments and like Lake County, and I'm not sure, and maybe Supervisor Hamburg can correct me, but I think it's federal area responsibility, BLM and what have you, I think, in that particular area that would separate a local fire department in Lake County, but I'm not positive.
I'm not either. I thought that was referenced in here. Didn't we reference a federal responsibility area?
We do in
We
some
do.
of them, but I
I'm
don't.
not sure if we did in Hopland, but I know we did in some of them.
We
Sure.
did, yeah.
All right, Tony, go ahead.
I keep worrying about those.
Just in reference to your comment, the county CEO did appear before the Mendocino County Association of Fire Districts, and one of the things staff is considering is looking at Lake County to coordinate future medical supervision for the fire districts in both counties. That's one of the options on the table.
Well, specifically for emergency medical services,
Correct.
but I think it'd be premature. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
that's-
it is, and the
again, it'll
Lakeport
be in a future MSR.
Okay.
On the table, I said.
So it's 1.2.1.3.
I mean, that's one of 4 or even 5 options that are being considered.
Good. All right, do you have the comments down? And we'll
Yes.
check that out. Let's move on to River Valley.
I'd like to start.
Calpella.
I'd like to start with thanking Chief Dale for providing information and also reviewing the administrative draft document. Redwood Valley-Capella Fire Protection District was formed in 1958 and serves the unincorporated communities of Redwood Valley and Calpella. It's approximately 61 square miles and provides the full range of services. It is bordered to the northwest by Little Lake Fire Protection District, to the east by Potter Valley Fire Protection District, and to the south by Ukiah Valley Fire Protection District. The map is located on PDF page 76. This draft does include an updated financial summary based on financial audit data from the district. That's located on page 70 and 71. And they've also provided a balance sheet on page 77. The district sphere is coterminous with the district boundary and was established along with the others in 1993. They have not requested any modification to their sphere, and staff is recommending affirming the existing sphere. There were no updates to the municipal service review determinations.
Very good, thank you. Any comments on this one? I have one on page 73 of 130, under need for facilities and services. It's determined in the 2016 MSR for Redwood Valley-Capella, the district serves approximately 7,500 to 8,000 residents, including 1,729 in Redwood Valley and 679 in Capella. Well, wouldn't Redwood Valley and Capella make up most of the 7,500 to 8,000? Where would, are we saying that the people outside Redwood Valley and Capella make up most of the residents? Seemed like that would be the majority of the residents.
Yeah, 60 square miles is a fairly large area. I think I'd have to double check those numbers. They came out of the municipal service review.
Because Tom Kai in that area, there's not a lot of people up there.
Well, but I wonder, the census designated place for Redwood Valley might only be a fraction of Redwood Valley, possibly. I don't know. Because that's what the reference is.
Because I live in Redwood Valley, but I don't live in the valley, it's per se too.
But it might be that the census designated place might be a postage stamp around the town center and really doesn't include all of East and West Road.
We could, yeah.
Another
I would
thing,
think they ought.
another thing to check when we get to the MSR.
Carrie, you have a question?
Not a question as much as just a statement, and maybe this is for the MSR. But after the fire, quite a bit of infrastructure to do with the fire district, fire hydrants, for instance, were damaged. And based on green building code regulation, homes have to have sprinklers in them now, and for new builds. And so there has to be an upsizing of pipes. I don't know if you'd say upsizing, but larger diameter pipes are going to have to be put in. So it's right now it's in a huge kind of flux, I guess you would say, until we can identify funding. And there is funding identified, and but it's going to be about a $10 million upgrade. And the upgrades are going to be needed before people can rebuild. But with the fire department, the new fire hydrants, proper size pipe to those hydrants are going to be made. So it's kind of a mixed bag right now, but it's just something I needed to state. And so we're aware of it and know that there will be quite a few changes.
Can we put our utility wiring underground now too?
I won't get into that.
Carol?
What I had wondered, and I guess that's MSR kinds of stuff, is that mentioning the fire, and particularly in Potter Valley and our Redwood Fire District, in you know, as a way of seeing or measuring how well the situation was responded to in terms of the equipment and stuff, and you're answering that they need upgrades. So
infrastructure was destroyed. And it's not just the upgrades.
But it's making sure that yeah. I know that people have to get permission from the fire district now in terms of rebuilding and stuff.
Well, every fire department goes over plans in the entire county, if they so desire. And they have so much time to respond back to planning department inquiries. And sometimes the departments do respond back and make comments. Sometimes the departments do not.
I was just thinking that the fire incident was a kind of ghastly test of how well these fire departments are prepared to deal with major disasters.
Well, I guess you could call that, and it was a major disaster. But the type of disaster that occurred in the evening of October 9th was a wind-driven fire torch. Mm-hmm. And it went so quickly. And you talk to the meetings I've attended.
Yeah.
It's a constant education for me about fire science. But what input was, they couldn't do any more than what they did.
Yeah, I have no fault.
Yeah.
I mean,
no. I'm just saying
that,
everybody, I'm sure every department in the entire region is going back and looking at what went right, what went wrong, what can we do better if we're faced with this disaster again. But this is like something that's never occurred in our history before.
Like a 100-year flood or something.
Exactly.
Tony.
Fire hurricane. Think of it as a fire hurricane.
That's a better, I call it a fire torch. But
and totally unpredictable to a certain degree.
Yes, the fire would burn in multiple directions.
I was just, wondering if we don't mention it at all in our fire districts. We don't mention, that kind of thing in this process, and I just wonder, is that a good thing, or is that something that we might want to consider in terms of the MSRs in the future?
We'll put it in the tickler file.
Okay,
Jerry, I think that what could be looked at in future MSR updates is notification systems during an emergency.
Okay.
Because there's state laws coming down that are going to change that and make it a component of fire service delivery and emergency delivery.
Yeah. We got it on our phone, a evacuation on our phone, which was really nice and helpful at 1 in the morning.
at least yours was working.
Well, yeah.
I had none.
Yeah, none?
No communication
Yeah.
because of what occurred.
So that is important. Good point.
And
Tony.
a lot of people as well. So, but there's other ways, and that's what's being examined. And it's not just for us. In our county, it's a statewide.
Yeah.
I just was on a conference call about fire cameras this last Friday, or Thursday afternoon, I think it was Thursday afternoon, which was a very interesting discussion. And so
Are they
anyway.
like Caltrans cameras on, like they have for the highway?
They have whole systems, and the technology is at a low level. It's not a big, huge, sophisticated system, but San Diego has implemented these fire cameras, and other areas of the state, I think County of Nevada, and then Nevada State, but it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily to alert for emergency calls, but once you can go on this camera area, and the cameras are showing you exactly how fast a fire is moving, which way it's headed, because you don't get the spotter planes when it's in the middle of the night.
Right.
And even if you got a spotter plane, you know, there's only so many that they have that they can put up in the air. And so anyway, but
That takes
all
time.
this is
Takes time to
being
get 'em in
talked
the air,
about.
too.
Yeah.
Jared, you had a comment?
Well, I was just gonna say that we were talking about water service for sprinklers, but I guess that involves more, a lot of places it's gonna be our water providers too that are impacted by this now. As opposed to fire departments just have to make sure it's implemented, but I would think it's gonna hit our water service providers and probably the consumer who now all of a sudden is gonna get hit with something they weren't expected to get hit. I know that this has been in Southern California for a while. You know, the fire codes down there required sprinklers in residences, and we were kind of grandfathered in, but I think we got our baptism by fire, literally, you know, to the change in the fire code now.
Well, I was hit by her comment because many of our water lines and brick trails are 4-inch and wouldn't be adequate to service as well a massive amount of new buildings with fire sprinklers. I did want to mention, though, just in the last comment, we do have a brand new satellite that was just launched that will service the West Coast that has technology that will integrate with the state of California, and fire predictive ability has just been upgraded massively by new technology in space.
Yeah, and they talked about that
Yeah.
in association with the cameras.
Yeah.
Carol?
Well, you know, it's not only the areas that were hit in this particular firestorm, but I live on the west side of Ukiah, and if the fire had come over our hill, the west side would have gone just like, you know, the area on Tom Kai Road or the parts of Santa Rosa. So I think this is something that's county-wide, because in a sense, we all have interface between, you know, wild country and urban areas.
Okay, we're off a little track here, but good points all. So we're, any more comment on Redwood Valley? All right, we'll move on to Potter Valley. I think Carrie might have some comments.
I don't, and I think Chief Polly must have been satisfied, and that's why he didn't show up. But he may have jet lag,
Yeah.
because I think it was very late, probably early this morning, that they finally got home. But I don't have any comment. I will go by and meet with him to make sure he's aware, because I don't want us going into an actual public hearing and have him show up and changes made again. So I will actually meet with him.
John, you have some comments?
Just apparently a typo on the chart for the financial summary on 41 of 130 for the middle column.
41?
Yeah, 41 of 130. It just looks like we need to put a 0 next to the dollar sign.
Oh, yeah, on the way down, yeah, good. So I assume there's zeros.
Yeah.
And I have a comment
Gotcha.
for the future MSR. Same comment on the special tax, the fact they have not gone out for a special tax yet.
Okay. I find it interesting that back in 1993, which none of us were here, that we, all in one resolution, all these fire districts had the SOI done at the same time.
Could have been a state mandate. You must determine an SOI.
And they haven't changed in 30 years. That's pretty good, future planning.
Yeah, and I can't remember precisely, but I do remember there was a huge rumble about the process that LAFCo went through back then. And I do recall that Potter Valley Fire District, and I think it still does have a little finger, that they would actually have to leave the valley, go up to Willits to access a certain area. So, but they may have gotten that changed through the process. But
Tony?
The mapping does show Bear Canyon, there is a gap, and that is an area that you're speaking to where CAL FIRE in the recent fire did cut a new road down to Tom Kai from the backside of Pine Mountain. And I think the ad hoc committee that's looking at additional access points for communities, that's one of the kind of discussions that need to be looked at.
and it's cave, what's it called?
Cave Creek?
Cave Creek.
Cave Creek.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that concludes the 5 workshops. With the 12, yeah, good talk.
Did we
We do Hopland.
Oh, okay. And I
So-
had no questions.
You have no questions on Hopland? Good. Will we be getting one map of all the fire districts so we can see where there would be some gaps?
Yes, and in the SOI document that will come for public hearing on April 2nd, there will be a map of all of the county with the fire districts
Good.
noted on them.
Did we have that before, or was it at Board of Soups level?
No,
I'm trying to think.
there is one that I know of, because we have it
There
on the
was
wall at the
one.
grand jury.
But I think if we're going to vote it on a public hearing next month, we should have something in front of us again. Tony?
Just before we move on, I would like to just say that Willits and Brook Trails Little Lake Fire District and the Brook Trails Fire Department are much more integrated today than they were last year. They're now mutually responding to many calls together, and that's basically to meet OSHA regulations for especially during structure fires, but also for coverage of stations because of manpower issues.
All right, well, we've completed, go ahead, Carrie.
You know, I think it was Board of Supervisors level when we were talking about fire districts. So there might be some maps available. I'm almost positive now it was Board of
Well,
Supervisors.
we do have maps of all the districts, and they, again, it makes sense to include it when we have the integrated document, so.
Jerry?
Yes, Jerry.
Jerry. Along the lines of what Tony says, and I'm trying to remember, but in most of these, it seems like when I talk to most of the fire departments, they're all struggling to find volunteers, and that seems to be, I don't know if that could be a kind of mentioned, and maybe that's more of an MSR thing, but that's, we need to recognize that problem out there, because I think when the public starts looking at things in the future with why am I being hit with this tax for a sleeper program, it's because less and less people are either volunteering or able to volunteer, and it's kind of making its way into all the fire districts.
We will be putting a pretty substantial introduction into the document, and we have a list of the fire chief's concerns that was provided by Commissioner Orth, and we'll be itemizing those and discussing them briefly in the introduction, and the volunteers will be one of those issues. Our hope is to get that document out to the commissioners 2 weeks before the April 2nd so that you have plenty of time to review it. It's going to be a pretty lengthy document. And I will follow up with county staff to see if we can get a printout of the map for the wall for discussion during the public hearing.
Very good, thank you. That's in April.
Correct.
The April 2nd meeting.
April 2nd.
Okay. All right, we are through with the 6A through 6E. We'll go to item 6F, preliminary draft budget and work plan for fiscal year 2018-2019. Go ahead, this is a long one.
So this starts on page 95 of your packet. I want to start by laying out the staff report. There are 3 attachments to the staff report. There's the preliminary budget. It's on page 99. There is a listing of the basic services on page 101, and the draft work plan is on 102. I think actually, let's see. Okay, so this is a workshop on the preliminary draft. The process is that we'll receive direction from the commission today. On April 2nd, we will schedule a public hearing for the preliminary proposed draft that will go out to the districts for comment, and then in May or June, we will schedule for a public hearing on the final. The executive committee has reviewed the preliminary draft that's in your packet, as well as the basic services and proposed tasks and the draft work plan. Those were at meetings held on February 5th and February 14th, and it has been recommended to the Commission for discussion and consideration today. The proposed operating expenses are about $11,500 less than the previous year. The proposed budget is $148,770, and that reflects the anticipated staffing services for day-to-day operations and for conducting the work plan. For the basic services portion, if you look on page 101, you will see the baseline tasks is what's proposed in that $148,000 budget. So that's the top part of that table on page 101. The projected changes from the adopted budget for this fiscal year, 2017-18, are summarized in the table that starts at the bottom of page 95. There'll be a 2,245 increase in staffing rates, reformatting and updating the policies and procedures manual and adding definitions, and also for a transparency action plan. So that would fall under basic services. A slight increase in the office expenses. For this year, we had budgeted for a new office computer. It doesn't look like we're going to do that this year, so we have budgeted for that next year. We also anticipate some increase in postage for elections for the next year. We have a decrease in the bookkeeping, and that's primarily we've gotten the QuickBooks reconciled and up to date, so we anticipate that will be a more streamlined process in the next year. The A87 costs, an estimate from the county auditor is that they will be 0 for this year, so we have dropped that down. There will be a slight increase in the membership fees. CALAFCO is going from $899 to $925. There may be a slight increase in the CSDA fees as well. The county GIS services, our work plan next year does not appear that it will be as much mapping as it has been this year, so we've dropped that budget down to $3,500. We've also reduced the budget for the travel and lodging expenses by about $1,000, and that's in looking at the last 4 or 5 years of actuals. We have never come close to spending the $4,000 that is budgeted, so we have dropped that down. The CALAFCO conference this year is in Yosemite at Tenaya Lodge. I checked in with the CALAFCO office, and the hotel rates will be about $175 a night plus tax. So this budget would allow for 4 commissioners to attend. The work plan budget would be $35,000, so that would be $10,000 less than it is this year. Any rollover from the work plan that's not completed this year would, both the tasks and the budget would flow into next year. Also, the executive committee had recommended including 2 LAFCo hosted Ethics and Brown Act trainings, so we've budgeted for $500 for that. So overall, again, that's a decrease of $11,455. On page 101 of the basic services table, there are some proposed tasks for consideration. This is an approach that we've taken this year to discussing the budget. These are items that would benefit the operations of the office. We have file management and possibly in the future a file scanning project that would take our files into the electronic format. We have manual development. That's development of a clerk's manual, updating of the commissioner's manual, and doing an office procedures manual. And that's to help standardize things and also make any future transitions easier. And we have enhanced outreach to member agencies. And the proposal is to attend, for the EO to attend up to 2 member agency meetings per month. We do these in coordination with the Municipal Service Review and Sphere updates when possible, and as budget and time allows. This would be a more focused effort on top of that. And then finally, on that list is a potential state funding opportunity, and this comes out of the Little Hoover Commission report and is something that CALAFCO is lobbying for, is a one-time funding opportunity. They've encouraged LAFCos to identify potential consolidations or reorganizations that have not occurred due to funding reasons. If that money becomes available, it will be a grant process. It will only be available for the 2018-2019 year. So CALAFCO is encouraging LAFCOs to be ready to do that and to move forward so that those funds can be utilized. So the costs for those proposed tax for consideration would be an additional $13,000. One option would be to prioritize those and to spread them out over a couple of years. I'll jump down to the proposed operating revenues. I think I'll start by saying that the revenues, that the budgets for the last few years have been balanced with the use of reserve funds that had been accumulated over a number of years, primarily from the work plan not being completed each year. We've now gotten down to the point where the reserves mostly meets our operational reserves per our policy, which is 25% of the operating budget, and also the $50,000 for the legal reserves. So with that being said, the proposed budget of $148,770 would likely require an increase to apportionment fees to $135,000, which is, in the past 2 years, it has been $120,000, and it is consistent with fiscal year 14-15, which was $135,000. At $148,770 for the budget and the apportionment fees of $135,000, we do have an anticipated cash balance rollover of approximately $8,000, which would still require the use of approximately $5,600 of reserves to balance. So the table, the top table on page 97 tries to outline that in a clear format. As a reminder, in fiscal year 16-17, there was an over-collection of fees that we did correct this fiscal year. So instead of collecting $120,000, which was in our budget, we collected $110,000. The table on at the bottom of page 97 is our financial summary. So where we stand now. What has changed in this table is that the cash in the treasury in the county, $50,000 of that was transferred over to our cash in the savings bank, which is our checking account, and it does not reflect the February claims. I'm going to move on to the work plan. So the draft work plan is on page 102.
Before you do that, is there any questions so
sure.
far? On the numbers here?
No, I just had some suggestions. I mean, I know I talked to Beth before, but maybe you guys ought to purchase a scanner ahead of all of this, even when you buy your computer, a standalone one. It might improve your office efficiency. They have those sheet-fed ones where you can scan multiple copies, and I know that it might help you guys streamline some work. It could be scanning while you're, as opposed to a sheet-fed scanner.
Okay, thank you.
That's more of a copier function than a computer function.
Oh no, they have these standalone.
Oh, they have
scanners,
standalone now?
standalone scanners that
Right on the computer?
They kind of plug in next to like a printer, and it's just that they're there. You can actually use them to fax and print too, but they're meant to put a ream of paper in them and they'd be scanning.
Okay.
So
Any other comments before she goes on to the work plan? That was a lot of numbers thrown at us. Okay, we'll move on to work plan.
So the work plan is a 5-year rolling work plan. It's been developed to, one, in the future, all municipal service reviews and sphere of influence updates will be combined together so that we don't have this back and forth that we've struggled with the fire districts. So with the fire protection districts, that will be the last standalone sphere updates that we anticipate. We've also scheduled these updates to occur chronologically based on the last sphere update. And so as they're done off the top, they roll down to the bottom, and we keep track of them that way. We've also spread the work plan out so that the budget remains fairly consistent at approximately $35,000 each year for doing updates. I want to point out that this does not include CEQA costs that may be associated with any sphere updates that are triggered by LAFCo itself. It has been recommended that the commission consider putting aside monies for CEQA reviews. These assume a CEQA exemption be filed, but again, if you look at a CEQA document, whether it's a mitigated negative declaration or an EIR, they can get quite pricey. So what we have scheduled for next year, well, for the remainder of this year, would be to finish up the fire protection service providers sphere update, and that's for 13 fire protection service providers. We hope to have the Redwood Coast Fire Protection District and the Brook Trails Township to the commission, at least for a workshop before the end of the fiscal year. The city of Willits will likely move into the next year. For next year, we have the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District and the Ukiah Valley Fire Protection District, which we had been included in the current multi-district sphere update that we're doing now, but because they've gone through so many changes, it's going to require an MSR update as well. The Covelo CSD, the Mendocino City CSD, and the Mendocino Coast Rec and Park District. We'll also be working on the Mutual Water Company's profiles, which we hope to have done by the end of this fiscal year. It also includes 2 line items for the lighting districts and for the county service areas. These are both going to take digging into the files to see what they are, which ones are active and which ones aren't, and whether they're dependent or independent districts. So this is a discovery-only budget for those. And then we'll need to figure out how best to approach those. I also wanted to point out that these budget estimates in here for the next following fiscal years are estimates only, and that we'll be reviewing this every year as we go through the budget development process.
Okay, any questions for Roma? Does the executive committee want to put forward any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Do that for us.
I believe the only thing that we added was $500 for some training again, because I thought those was important. The Brown Act and the ethics training that we've conducted here this last year. But I think that was about it. I will say that I did go through as treasurer and try to determine the under budget, or what we expect to have in cash at the end of June. The documents here state there's about $8,100. I think it's going to be more close to $11,000 based on what I think, based on what we're spent so far with 4 months remaining. Regardless, we're going to be into our reserves a little bit of money, between $5,000 and or as low as $2,300. But I only bring that up because it's something I don't believe we can reduce the apportionment fees if we wanted to. John?
Well, and we're never going to hit the mark perfectly,
No.
but I think I hear you saying you're comfortable with the numbers as presented, understanding that there will be some variation on the year end.
Sure.
And yet maintaining the apportionment as recommended.
Yes, that's what I'm recommending. And it still maintains a operating reserve of at least 25%.
Plus the 50,000 legal reserve,
Plus
which
legal, yeah. Didn't have any, yeah, Teresa.
Regarding their Brown Act training and ethics training, I think that was a really good idea. Is $500 enough based on how much the training cost last time we did it?
That's what we we thought it was going to work. Beth, did you have some input on that?
Well, county council.
So county council has offered to do it at $160 per training, and it's required very minimal staff input at this point. So we thought that was sufficient.
Yeah, we thought it was a good idea to give something back to the districts as well, to the city. Carrie?
And when we talk about proposed items for the future that we need to fund, I do think it's important with the electronic records. Because LAFCo at one point lost all its records. And I think, they've been accumulated through processes as we've moved forward. But, and I think that was very unfortunate. But the amount of work that we're doing today, I think electronic records is something we really need to look at. Because this is good work. We're getting through MSRs, SOIs. We're getting smarter about how we do it. But I don't want, and I don't think today's staff will allow this to happen, but I just don't want our paper records all of a sudden disappearing.
I might add the $13,000 that is additional proposed task for consideration. We did not make a decision at the executive committee level for that. We just thought we'd bring it back to the full commission to see if there was anything that we wanted to add. But at this point, we didn't make a recommendation.
So none of the proposed tasks are currently included?
No. Tony, do you have a question?
Well, just a comment. Our district is going through the whole electronic records deal. We have one of those big trailer units that has all our paper records, and we went through a new printer technology will allow PDF and searchable files. Very important, especially as you get less paperwork going. But we're going to move our paper to a business that stores long-term the historical records, and knowing that some of our records went through floods and personnel change, disappearances, I think the whole process is important, and plus the requirements to have records up on our website in the future, I think it'll matrix really well with that.
Anybody else, John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the one item of the proposed tasks, the last one, potential state funding opportunity, it seems like potentially that could be something we would want to be ready for. There's been some talk about some possible consolidation of some of the fire districts, and being in a position to apply for state funding to study the issue would then allow us to be in a position to make an informed decision, and the districts as well. It wouldn't prejudge the outcome, but it would provide, I think, relevant and helpful information. So would the appropriate thing be to ask staff to come back with that item or fold that in now? I'm not sure. And then I have one other question.
Carol?
I was thinking about the water districts, which are beginning to, going through the process of unification, and that might be a project that would be very assisted by state funding.
Well, they already have the state funding for it.
You have that as a
right?
comment.
Some of it, but they do have some of it, but I'm certainly going to have this on my radar screen just for that reason, to see if the funding comes through.
But I think it's, with state funding, you have to be sort of plan ready before you even apply for the funds. And
I think
so that consumes a lot of staff time to get things ready to actually to submit a proposal. So it means that we have to have proposals ready well before we know if there's funding or not.
Well, I think the districts pretty much have their plan, because we have a state senator that is will take a legislative process as well. Mm-hmm. And I think they're pretty much getting all that together, trying to get over the humps, because there are some. when you bring that many districts together. So I think they would be ready to help submit those plans, and we could all be together on it.
I'd just like to bring it before the commission that we're over our reserve 25% by about $4,500. So if we want to put some more money into some of these items, we can. That's up to the commission, but we are over our 25%
Right.
reserve.
Well, I think potentially this could be $1,500 well spent. So,
Okay. Kevin?
Thank you. I would also say that we may actually know a little bit more about that by the time we get to adoption. So, you know, I'm in favor of including all 4 tasks in this year's budget, and I particularly think that there's a tremendous amount of value in the enhanced outreach to member agencies, and
Are you
so I'd like to.
Are you recommending
one
that
of
we
that.
increase our apportionment fees up to 169 then?
135.
No, from 135 to, I think they're,
No, from 125 to
161.
135.
or 150, I'm sorry, 150. If we were to include all 4, we would have to include, she's recommended that the apportionment fees be increased to 150.
Well, that's what we wanted to bring back to the commission.
Right.
Because I think as the executive committee, we didn't really have a.
No, we didn't make a
firm
recommendation.
on that.
I like
Just
the 4th one, but
Not all of
I'm
them.
not quite willing to include them all at this point. And I think, you know, in terms of, certainly there's value in the EO attending member agency meetings, but I kind of think some of that can be folded into the work plan tasks. And if, you know, if that runs into a problem, then the EO could come back and request a budget adjustment. But I'm not quite willing to front load that amount at this time.
We could also, as commissioners, go to these meetings as well, not have the EO, and do our own outreach.
Absolutely.
What was I going to make a comment? Uma did suggest, though, we could take these 4 items and spread them out over the next few budget years instead of all in one year.
Right.
So,
And again, one of the more time sensitive is the last one that's identified.
so is that a recommendation, the 4th? Kevin, you're okay with that, or you still want?
No, I mean, that's, I think, what we needed was
Okay. Is there anyone against adding the 4th item for $1,500? The
I think that's a
state
good thing.
funding?
We have to be proactive.
Okay, Uma, I think we'll add that in for our review next month. John?
I did want to ask on the Transparency Action Plan, given that one of those items is to conduct the special district election for a representative to the redevelopment dissolution board, that ongoing board. I'm not given the right title, but LAFCo is charged with conducting a special district election. And if a special district election costs $1,000, then is $1,300 enough for the Transparency Action Plan? And this is on page 101 of 130.
So I did not include the RDA special election in the transparency plan. There has been a lot of discussion on the EO listserv about how that gets paid for, and that it's a mandate that will fall to LAFCOs with no funding source. And the executive officer for CALAFCO is working to secure funds through that same one-time funding process to reimburse LAFCOs for that. That has not, there has been no increase to the proposed budget for that item. And it would have to occur by July of this year, actually, so it would impact this budget, this fiscal year budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, do we have enough input for our executive officer to bring this back next month? Tony?
Asking for some input, I would go with the 3 items on the task, the management, the manual development, and the potential state funding. And I'll try to go to some district meetings this year.
I think I'll try as well. But you're still in favor of the $1,500 one this year?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? We will take a break on matters for discussion, the proposed executive officer service contract amendment and agreement. Our council would like to participate by phone on that item. I'd like to take a 5-minute break if we could. Oh, John, you still have comments?
Sorry. We have different comments regarding the proposed tasks, I believe. So there seemed to be general consensus. We do want to add the 4th item. Commissioner Orth is advocating we add a couple of additional items.
In future budgets?
Or this one.
Did you mean the rest of them going into the 1920?
I was in favor of 5 and 1,500. Understanding we might need to increase our apportionment. Because I know those are...
I'm sorry, I thought you threw that into a future budget.
The enhanced outreach, I did.
Okay.
I was in favor of 3 of the 4 in this next budget year.
Well, Carrie?
Well, but we need to be sensitive to the fact that we're already increasing.
Yes.
From 120 to 135. And I believe our chair and treasurer said, okay, bigger increase. And that hits hard on special districts. So, you know, in a lot of ways, I don't like the baby steps, but maybe it's more reasonable, so I don't know.
I just made the point that our reserves can handle the 1,500, but if we're gonna add another 5, we're gonna be below our 25%.
Unless we increase.
Unless we increase apportionment fees.
Which
I'm really not in favor of doing.
The only reason I said it is I know the state requirements are getting pretty strong on what we put on our website as to our public records. And both of these tasks will help that.
It does seem that staff is on top of what the state requirements are, however.
We'll be discussing that item later in the in our program here.
I would also suggest that we send some form of information to our special districts long before that, you know, we've spent down the reserves and that we've tried to make it as easy for them as possible in the past 2 years. Because in a sense, we've kind of reduced it to the point where we're kind of at bottom level and that there are things that we need to do. So I think letting them know that why this is coming and why there's an increase and how this increase might benefit them to some degree is something that we probably should have staff do, or the commission send a letter fairly soon letting them know what's coming down the road.
Okay. I'd like to be all in favor of this one item though, Tony, if we could. Are you all right with dropping the 2,500s till next? Or are you still gonna?
Well, I just said an opinion. I'm not, I mean, we don't have to be in total agreement.
Well, I just wanted everybody to be on the same page.
I'm willing to drop in favor, but I do think they're critical tasks.
Yeah, I agree. Kevin?
Thank you. This is actually very good feedback for us in terms of how we've been going and monitoring and pushing forward with this. I think, again, we're going to have a lot more information as we get towards the adoption stage of our budget. So we'll really have a better idea of how to prioritize at that point.
Well, we're already, in my opinion, we're already increasing our apportionment fees by $15,000, so it'd be easier next time around, I think.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is at this point in the budget cycle, we're not exactly sure where we're going to end up when we actually adopt the budget. the next year.
Right.
Next fiscal year, and that may be some of these, may be opportunities that we can take advantage of.
We have 2 more shots at it.
Yeah.
John?
We do also have a staff recommendation that we direct staff to notice a public hearing for the proposed draft budget and work plan for fiscal year 2018-19 for April 2nd, 2018. So I think we need to make that formal recommendation, and if I understand correctly, that would include making the adjustment to include the potential state funding opportunity from the list of proposed tasks, and that additional $1,500 would also be drawn from reserves, and then any other adjustments consistent with that direction.
Second.
That was a motion, huh?
Does it need to be, was that a motion, Commissioner McCowan, or a recommendation? Or direction
Motion.
from the commission? A motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call, please.
I'd like to clarify the motion, that it's to implement the staff recommendation with the addition of $1,500 for the potential state funding project that will be pulled from reserves.
Correct.
Thank
and
you.
other changes consistent with that direction.
I just have one
Yes.
procedural question. This is a workshop, so do we actually need to take action on that motion, or can it just be direction?
It
I'm not
was
sure-
expected to be a direction, but
I'm not sure why we're voting, if
yeah.
we're really gonna have the public
I
hearing.
mean, I'm fine if it's simply give direction. I think it could be done either way. I think the direction is clear.
Let's strike the motion and just give direction.
Noted as a commission direction. Thank you.
So the
It was a good
motion is
attempt.
withdrawn,
Withdrawn. Good attempt, though.
erased from memory, consigned to the dustbin of
But
history.
you really put your intent into it, though.
We'll give you a here instead of a second. How's that?
All right, we have your direction on the budget for April 2nd. 5-minute break. We'll come back and discuss the executive officer service agreement contract. Our council will be via phone, so if you want to participate in that.
Okay, noting we're breaking at 10:24 and the microphones will be on for a few
10:24,
seconds.
we'll be up at 10:30.
I'd also like to announce that LAFCo counsel Scott Brown is on the phone, so is available to answer questions or provide clarity. So this is a two-part, or two parts to this item. One is a contract amendment, and the other for the contract that expires on June 30th of this year. And the second is a renewal of the Executive Office's Services Agreement that would take place on July 1 of this year. So the purpose for the amendment is to modify the subcontracting clause of the contract, the current contract. Right now it states that in order to subcontract, there has to be written approval from the commission before doing that. However, we're requesting that this be modified to allow subcontracting to complete the tasks of the work plan and workload as needed. And that's in order to allow me to better manage the workload. So the proposed language is on 105 of your agenda packet. If you would like to look at the existing language, it is on page 113. It's the cross out on mid-page. So I wanted to point out that that if the commission wishes to have approval rights to the subcontractors that I subcontract with, then that would blur the employee independent contractor line. So there are two options that I discussed with legal counsel. One would be to modify the contract with the language that's here, and the other option would be to develop a policy regarding subcontracting, and we could do that with the Policies and Procedures Committee. But in that case, there would be a contract between the commission and any subcontractors.
I believe the executive committee, when we reviewed this, thought we'd bring back both options for the full commission to discuss. I don't think we made a recommendation.
I have a recommendation because I kind of raised this issue. My concern was I don't want to put LAFCo in a position of having to approve subcontractors for our EO and then have to go through an RFP process for every one of those decisions. To me, it's about our EO being able to develop her resources to get the job done to provide what we need to be accomplished from the commission's point of view.
And that was contingent upon what kind of language that we could come up with. And I believe
our council came
up with a language because we wanted to be able to present this to the whole commission and the reasoning why.
That's true, yeah. John?
Well, I just wanted to clarify the intent is that the subcontracting would take place out of the executive officer's portion of the budget.
Right.
So I think that should be explicitly stated, and I don't think it currently is. One other thing, I do like the stricken language from the former Section A, except you could strike on behalf of or, so that would read, neither party shall, on the basis of this agreement, contract in the name of the other party. And any agreement that violates this section shall confer no rights on any party and shall be null and void. So they would be contracting out of their budget to get the work done. They would not be contracting in our name. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's worth stating that, and it helps put the subcontractor on notice.
Do you have a comment, Scott, on that?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay. And anything else, Kevin, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that's. Okay. I think it's appropriate to clarify that. I think, you know, we did ask for legal to look at this and give us this revised contract language because we did want to have that option of approving it. So does that fold into this Amendment 1, John, your suggestion?
Correct. I'd have another point that would clarify that the contracting would be out of the contractor's share of the budget, whatever the appropriate wording is for that. And then as the last item in the ABCD, so we'd have an E, and then what used to be A would become F with the deletion of on behalf of or, and otherwise it'd be included. And that's the one that clarifies they're not contracting in LAFCo's name.
Well, I'd be prepared to move for approval of Amendment 1 with the changes suggested by Commissioner McCowan.
I would second that.
Wait.
And for legal counsel to provide the final language for it's not a bullet point, but it's the subsection that would say that the contractor is contracting out of her funds.
I think you can do that in A.
Back to the motion, would it be more appropriate to approve the contract with that language in there already, which is included? Or do you want to approve an amendment that we haven't really approved a contract yet?
No, the amendment is to the existing contract so that our EO could subcontract as soon as it's signed, yeah.
Okay. I see what you're saying. John?
Well, to legal counsel, if the direction is clear enough, I think the commission could take action today, but maybe you have wording to reflect that the subcontracting would come out of the contractor's budget and the proper way to state that and the proper place to insert it.
Scott, you hear that?
Yes, I would just stick it in 17 as a new subsection saying that any subcontracting shall be paid out of contractors' funds and not out of the LAFCo funds unless otherwise agreed.
How's that?
So that'd be a new second sentence in the main section 17.
I would just add it as E, as subsection E.
Oh, okay. And then the revised former A would become subsection F.
Yeah.
So with that, Scott, we could then have a motion and approve this?
Except we need to discuss 18.
Yeah, just with instructions that it be revised into final form for the chair's signature.
Okay. What did you say about E?
We need to look at 18, and you could do it all in one motion.
18.
There's suggested changes for 18.
Yes, number 18 on page 113 of 30, termination.
Oh, okay. Well, there was other changes too, I believe.
But that was mainly of the name of the contract.
I think 17 and 18 may have been the only ones.
Is that true, Uma?
Yeah.
That you know?
Yeah, there are minor changes for the update in the business name.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So do you want to put 17, 18 into one motion then? John?
Well, and on 18, I'm a little uncomfortable extending our notice to the contractor to 6 months. We've had a situation in the past, it could have been desirable to terminate the relationship sooner. On the other hand, there should be some equity. If we have the opportunity to give contractor notice, they should have the opportunity to give us notice.
Well, I've got that.
6 months seems longer than necessary. Maybe 90 days each way is more appropriate.
The reason the executive committee came up with 6 months is because we'd have to go through an RFP process. It
Well,
could take time.
Understood, but I think 90 days is enough lead time.
Usually we took more than that.
Or if you want 6 months from contractor, but I'm not comfortable with us having to give 6 months. And this has nothing to do with our current contractor, who I actually
No.
anticipate will be here for as long
So-
as she wants to be.
But I understand what you're saying. But contracts can be changed if you do happen to get a new contractor. I think for the current situation, that the 6 months is what we want to go with.
That's what we came up with. But I might add that it says 6 months written prior notice as may contractor. I think that should be stated that contractor will give commission 6 months prior written notice as well. It's a little more transparent as to what is actually being said. Because I couldn't understand after as may contractor. I assumed the contractor is going to give the same 6 months notice. Why not just say it?
I was just trying to use as few words as possible.
I'll just note for the audience and commissioners, Scott's watching the feed live, so it's about 10-second delay, just so you know if he's delayed in hearing you.
So we have 6 months. We have another item that should be 90 days. What's the pleasure of the commission? We'd like to get this done today, so let's all agree on 6 months. Kevin?
I like what's recommended.
Gary?
Fine.
Okay. We'll go with 6 months.
Yeah, I did add a provision allowing you out on a short-term basis for cause. So you're not as tied as you might otherwise be.
There was also the, what is it called? We do have an assurance performance as well. If we're not happy with the performance, we can let our EO know, and she has to respond, he or she has to respond with a written notice back to us. So if we get off kiltered a little bit, we can put her back on the tracks. One last item, just to be consistent, the amendment has my name as Jerry Ward, the contract has Gerald Ward. I think both of them should say Gerald Ward, so there's no misunderstanding. All right, I'll entertain a new motion on.
Well, I think we have the motion
Yep.
that.
I will modify my motion to include the approval of or authorize the chair to sign the proposed executive officer's agreement with Hinman and Associates, which expires on June 30th, 2018.
Gary, you were the second? Okay. Any other comments? We'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner McNerlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes. And I hope you are here for as long as we are on the commission, too.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Your streaming actually works quite well, except there's a delay in the audio.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for being here with us.
Happy to be in, and anytime you think you might need me, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, Scott, thank you.
Bye.
Okay. That was quicker than I thought. Where's my thing? All right, we'll move on to 7B, recommendation of new financial institution for reserve fund. Uma?
Thank you. This item came out of a discussion at the executive committee level because we currently have our reserve fund at the Community First Credit Union. It came to our attention that it only requires one signature to withdraw funds from that account. So when we discussed the option of adding the requirement for a second signature, their policies do not allow that. So we had discussed with the executive committee level, looking for a different bank that would allow for that safeguard. We did find a West America Bank, which is located on East Perkins Street. They're a regional bank, and they do have that provision that we can require the 2 signatures on it for any withdrawals. In talking with their staff, they've recommended a money market savings account that has the ability to write checks on it, again with the 2 signature requirement, and that will make it easier to transfer funds between our accounts. So the executive committee has reviewed the proposal and is recommending the change in banking institutions to the commission for consideration. And today we're looking for direction from the commission on that item.
Need a motion, or?
Teresa?
Did you look at other banks as well, such as Savings Bank in Mendocino County?
We felt there would be an issue with FDIC because it only insures up to $100,000. So having it all in one bank, we would probably exceed that from time to time. So we looked at, I think we looked at other banks.
We looked at several other local banks, Redwood Credit Union, and there was another one. Neither one of those had that provision that would allow for the 2 signatures.
One more question.
Sure.
Hold on, I'm just making notes, please. I'm sorry. Also, if you're requiring 2 signatures, just a suggestion would be to have 3 signatures on the signature cards, maybe the 3 executive committee members, so if one person isn't available, we're not stuck in a pickle.
And then the good thing about the West America is we can write up to 6 checks a month too. So we need a pooling out of reserves. We don't have to get we don't have to redo a CD or something like that, which is nice. So I'd like a recommendation that the 3 of us on the executive committee be on the signature card. Jerry?
Do you need a motion, or just?
Yeah, I think we need a motion.
Then I'll move with the executive committee's recommendation with the, so moved.
I'll second.
We'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin?
I have clarification. So is the
Yes.
motion only to switch banks at this point?
And
Or is the
to-
motion also to have 3 people on the signature card?
I think,
Yeah, the executive-
I think 3 signatures can be added. Is that what your intent was?
Yeah.
That was the understanding for me as well.
Okay. Hi, thank you.
Okay. So just to clarify, the motion is to transfer the reserve fund to West America Bank and have 3 signatures of the executive committee on the signature card at the bank.
Aye.
Thank you.
With only 2 required.
Correct. Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Orth?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 7C, LAFCo's evolving mission, new laws, requirements, and transparency. You're up again.
Thank you. So this was a CALAFCO University course that our analyst Larkin and I attended in January. We kind of ran out of time at our last commission meeting, so I've provided this update in written form. Unless the commission wishes, I won't go through each item. I think I'm going to touch on the ones that have action items for LAFCOs. So this was a legislative review. It was an all-day course. It was a legislative review, a brief overview of the Little Hoover Commission study that came out, and also a kind of a working group on LAFCOs and transparency at the end of the class. So for the legislative review, these were a number of bills that were passed in 2017 that relate to LAFCOs. AB 2257 amended the Brown Act, and that it's to require a prominent and direct link on the homepage of each district or government agency. So I actually have done this already, but the action item was to create that direct link on our homepage. SB 272, if I bump down to the bottom of page 122, has to do with providing a catalog of enterprise systems. And enterprise systems are like software. It's kind of a disclosure of what software is used by a special district or government entity. So that is something that would be included in our transparency action plan, is to create that and then post it on the website. At the top of page 123 is SB 1266, and this relates to the joint powers, or the JPAs, and filing those agreements and amendments with LAFCo. This is a project that we started last year, I believe. So we're collecting those, and some action items would be to create a public repository on our website. And then in our next round of MSRs and SOI updates, to include a discussion of relevant JPAs at some point in those documents. At the local level, they've also suggested that we define municipal services. So the municipal services would be, that would tell us what JPAs that we should collect. So there is some leeway in the bill for local implementation through that definition. I'll go down to AB 979. These were updates to the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act to administer district appointments to the consolidated RDA, and those are the redevelopment agency oversight boards. Mendocino County has been identified as one of the 37 counties in California that will be required to consolidate their RDA boards. I have reached out to the county auditor regarding this issue, and have not heard back yet. But I have initiated the process and shared CALAFCO and the California SDA. There was a white paper that was created, so I shared that with the county staff, and we'll follow up in the coming weeks on that. I also participated in a CALAFCO webinar on this topic last week. SB 448 requires the controller to publish and update annually a list of independent special districts. And it also requires special districts to file their audits with LAFCo as well as the controller, which will be helpful as we prepare the MSR and SOI updates in the future. And it will also require the controller to identify inactive districts, special districts, and send that to LAFCO's for action. So the action item for us at the local level would be, once we're notified by the controller of any inactive districts, that we would have to have 90 days to review and initiate those dissolutions. The Little Hoover Commission, there was a lot of focus on the website transparency, and also that 2018 bill seeking the one-time grant funding through the state came out of that Little Hoover Commission recommendation. So those are action items. The website transparency, there's going to be a session at the staff workshop in April, and also they may be doing a CALAFCO University course on that will be of interest and we can participate in. And the final thing we did for the class was to look at the transparency of various LAFCO websites, and they kind of did not a ranking, but gave an overview of how LAFCO's did in general. Some were really great, some not so great, and some in between. There was a few action items that I pulled out of there that we can do to improve, and that's to provide sphere maps for each agency on our website. We do have them in the documents, but to pull them out in a separate link might be beneficial. One other recommendation was to publish compensation information on the website. And then finally to prepare and implement a transparency action plan, which we'll be doing in next fiscal year.
Back to the compensation, is that what board members get paid? Is that what they're looking for?
There was a lot of discussion around that. One of them was what the commission received in any stipends or travel expenses, and another one was actual contracts with contract staff. Yeah, it's implemented differently by every LAFCO or not at all.
Okay.
So it would be an item for discussion.
How difficult would it be to put the sphere maps on our website?
It would probably just take a couple of hours worth of work to do that. And I think as we adopt them that it would be a good idea.
Okay.
Just a question on AB 979. Where do special districts have involvement in redevelopment agencies within Mendocino County? I mean, I don't quite understand why we need a board overview member from a special district.
John?
I might be able to provide a potential answer is when redevelopment agencies were formed, tax increment revenue that otherwise would have gone to cities, schools, and special districts instead was directed to the redevelopment agencies. And so now that the redevelopment agencies are winding down, I think the intent is that those entities that were providing funds have an oversight role, because it's ultimately it could be to their advantage to see that those tax increment monies are, that the RDAs really do wind down, and those revenues go to the entity that originally was entitled to receive them.
Understood.
That sound
Thank
plausible?
you. Thank you. I
was a
just wanted to be
potential answer.
educated.
It was a good answer. Yeah. Carrie?
Are all of the Assembly bills and Senate bills actually passed, or are any of them still in committee? Or
These are all ones that were passed.
okay, thanks.
Carrie?
We all collected information on JPAs within our county. So I don't recall, maybe I just, did you pass out an official listing of the JPAs that were finalized with LAFCo?
We have not done that yet. We do have a listing of them drafted, but we haven't finalized that list yet. And would the commission like to have that emailed to them, each individually?
Sure.
Okay.
I just think it's important when you start looking at the new laws
Yes.
that the commission at least have an idea of who the JPAs are countywide.
And it appears we have to put in our MSRs what the JPAs may do for that particular district or city as well, according to the law. So we'll have to implement that in future MSRs. What else have we implemented from this list that you just gave us that we've already done? I think 2257's been implemented, right? We have a direct link.
Correct.
Okay.
The 1266 has been started, and I have initiated contact with the county about 979. I think the others are, we're waiting for, some of them are waiting for state, information from the state, and yeah, I think that's it.
And you have $1,500 next budget to start the Shovel Ready program.
Right.
Plan Ready, Shovel Ready. John, do you have a question?
Well, with regard to this requirement to expand the MSRs to include discussion of relevant JPAs, is there any guidance on what that discussion ought to include? Or does it just need to be a snapshot of the purpose for which the JPA was created? And
my understanding is there's no, it's not defined at this time. However, when we were talking amongst the staff who attended the course, sometimes it can just be a mention. I think that probably in the future there's going to be more regulation regarding JPAs and how LAFCo is involved in that. But at this time, it's just discussing and making it transparent the JPAs that are relate to that whatever's being included in the MSR.
And it would seem like maybe the list of JPAs for those that involve multiple agencies, and probably all of them will, I would expect. For instance, Mendocino Solid Waste Management Authority includes the cities of Ukiah, Willits, Fort Bragg, and the county. So there could just be a brief paragraph describing that and the stated purpose, and then that paragraph could be inserted into each of the MSRs for the cities as an example. Does that kind of make sense?
That was my understanding, yes. Yeah.
Good point. Tony?
And like I brought up the Covelo Fire District and the recommendation of a JPA formation, it seems like this will allow us to discuss the JPA, what kind of JPAs might work within an MSR format for each agency. and have a definition of what we're actually proposing. I think that would work under this requirement.
Any other comments? If you could just give us updates in the future when we do implement some of these, so we're aware of them. But it's these are, I think, good things coming out of CALAFCO and the evolving Hoover's little Hoover report. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to information and report items. 8A, work plan, current and future proposals. Doesn't appear we have much activity change there.
No changes on the applications or pre-applications. On the work plan, just to reiterate, we have scheduled a public hearing for April 2nd for the fire districts, the 13 fire districts. And then by the end of the year, we will bring Brook Trails and Redwood Coast Fire Protection District to the Commission for workshop. The City of Willits, with the contract amendment, hopefully we'll be able to move forward on the City of Willits in the next month. And most of these other ones will be rolling into next year.
How about the Anderson Valley CSD with their power and their provide water and sewers? Are they making any progress on that?
I believe they're still in the EIR process for their study, and until that happens, LAFCo really they have to have a plan for services before we can process any kind of
But they're still moving forward then?
They are, yes. Good. They have Proposition 1 funding, I believe, so they are grant funding for it.
All right. Any questions? And we'll move on to...
One comment.
Oh, sorry.
Just note that I passed out a paper on formation of a basic information on boulevard districts, and that might be an item that Brook Trails might be moving forward with and might come forward in the next few months or for next year.
So what is a boulevard district? I've read enough today.
I went to the state. It's not in common use, so it would be sort of pathfinding, but I think that's why we're researching it. We think it might provide some solution to the Sherwood Road Second Access program.
Okay. All right, good, thanks. Correspondence?
We received a letter from the special district, what is it called?
SDRMA?
Yes. Regarding potential increases in auto insurance and liability insurance.
And that was what you projected in the budget, that might be $100 more a year?
I'm going to double check those numbers, but yes, I want to make sure that it matches up.
Executive Office report?
So we did receive, CALAFCO has published a white paper on agricultural preservation. I believe that was emailed to each of you. We also have a hard copy. If the commission wishes, I can give a report on that at our next meeting, just kind of outlining some of the details. We received no nominations for the alternate special district seat, so we'll be restarting that process this coming week. I spent time responding to the State Controller's Office request for a list of all special districts within Mendocino County. I met with the Piercy Fire Protection District in Piercy on February 8th and the Covelo Fire Protection District on February 9th. Participated in a webinar that was co-hosted by CALAFCO and the CSDA on the RDA Oversight Board Special District Appointment process. And then Larkin and I will be attending the CALAFCO staff workshop the second week in April.
Did you have some good feedback from Piercy?
I did. It was a great meeting. I was there about 3 hours. Walked through their station and looked at all their equipment and had some really good discussions about spheres and what it meant to expand their spheres, their sphere, and we went through the document pretty much line by line. It was a good meeting.
So their apportionment fees are now being spent wisely. Good. Thank you. All right, commission report, committee reports. I don't believe the DPP meet. No. Policy and procedure. And executive committee hasn't met since.
Yes, you did, twice.
Well, we met.
We met, everything was on the agenda. We actually met, but everything that we covered was on the agenda.
Okay. Commission reports.
I was going to mention the Boulevard District. I've already done so, so that's in front of you, so you can do some basic research over time. It is not a formal proposal yet, but it's just something that's on the radar.
Thank you.
Okay, CALAFCO business and legislative report.
On page 127 of your packet, the CALAFCO has adopted their 2018 legislative policies. As a reminder, we'll be going through these with the Policies and Procedures Committee for adoption of a legislative platform for the Commission, probably in the next month.
Okay. There's no more comments. We will adjourn.
We're out of here.
2 hours and 15 minutes.
We're still on mic. Give me just a second.